Practice Test 3. Listening section. Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
Today I'm going to talk about something we all use every day, even right now as you all sit in your chairs poised to take notes. No, not your brains. I'm talking about, our muscles. What are they? How do they work? I think that you can all guess that muscles produce body movement. Here's a definition for you. Muscles are tissues that produce movement in the body when they contract. Simple, right? We move when our muscle tissues tighten, and each muscle is made up of a lot of individual muscle fibers. Vertebrates, animals with a backbone, a spinal column. We don't have to get more technical than that for today's lecture. That's us, humans. Dogs, fish, birds. Vertebrates have three main kinds of muscles. There's the cardiac muscle, the heart muscle, right? And of course, that's the only place it's found, the heart. Uniquely, it never rests, and if it did, you'd be in some serious trouble. All right. Then we have smooth muscles. They're called that because the tissue, the muscle fibers, they're smooth. Long, thin cells, sheets of cells, really. They're also sometimes called involuntary muscles. The nervous system controls them automatically. We're not even necessarily aware that they're working a lot of the time. For example, our intestines digesting food. That's the work of smooth muscles. We don't have to think about digesting food. Our intestines just do it. But by far the muscles we're most familiar with, aware of, are the skeletal or striated muscles. These are responsible for the movement of the body. I suspect these are the muscles most of you thought about when I began the lecture. So, skeletal muscles are, of course, called that because they're attached to two parts of the skeleton, parts that move relative to each other, like arms and legs. If you want to bring those two parts of the skeleton together, you contract the skeletal muscles that are connecting them. Oh, and striated, they're also called striated muscles. Everything has to have two names. Striated refers to how the fibers look. Long cylindrical striped fibers, that's what striated means, striped. Now, I just finished describing smooth muscles and telling you that they're all so-called involuntary muscles, but actually skeletal muscles can be involuntary too. If you decide you've got something better to do than, listen to this lecture, for example, you stand up to leave. Well, you engage muscles in your legs deliberately, on purpose, right? So you can stand up. That's a voluntary contraction of your muscles. On the other hand, when you're sitting on the examining table in the doctor's office, and he taps just below your knee with his little hammer, and your leg jerks, your knee straightens for a moment. That's an involuntary movement of those same muscles. It's a reflex, an automatic response to a stimulus. Another example is when you leave this lecture hall and walk outside into the bright sunlight, the pupils of your eyes will contract. They'll get smaller, right? Well, those aren't skeletal muscles, of course. They're smooth muscles. Now, some movements involve both voluntary and involuntary muscles. They can involve conscious action on your part, but also muscle movement that you can't control. Take, swallowing, for instance. You're not supposed to eat in class, and I'm approaching the row you're sitting in. Quickly, you swallow that last bit of your candy bar so I don't catch you eating in the lecture hall. Now, this is a voluntary swallow. But if you're at the dentist, you can also do the opposite. Try to stop yourself from swallowing when your mouth is wide open, and the dental assistant's got that little mirror in there, and she's cleaning your teeth. After, say, 30 seconds or so, you just have to swallow, right? You can't help it. That's because the swallowing process, though you can start it with movements of your voluntary muscles, is taken over by involuntary muscles at a certain point. These involuntary muscles sense a buildup of saliva and start doing their job. Or wait, try this. Try to swallow 10 times in a row right now. Go ahead. Well, everyone managed the first swallow and the second, but who made it to 5? It gets harder and harder, doesn't it? You want to swallow, but you can't make yourself swallow again and again.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 1. What is the talk mainly about? Number 2. What do smooth muscles and striated muscles have in common? Number 3. How does the professor clarify his point about movements that are a mixture of voluntary and involuntary actions? Number 4. In the lecture, the professor describes 3 different types of muscles. Indicate to which category each of the following belongs. Number 5. What kind of muscle do people have conscious control over? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
If you decide you've got something better to do than listen to this lecture, for example, you stand up to leave. Well, you engage muscles in your legs deliberately, on purpose, right? So you can stand up.
Number 6. Why does the professor mention standing up? Listen to part of a conversation between a student and a professor.
Professor Mackey, do you have a moment?
Why, Maria, hello. Sure, come on in. I'm glad to see you. I haven't had a chance to congratulate you. It's not every first-year student who gets invited to participate in the annual Gregory Art Show.
Well, that's what I wanted to talk with you about.
I had nothing to do with it, Maria. You got it on your own merit, believe me. In fact, I'm not really a favorite of the gallery crowd.
No, well, I didn't know that, but, well, I guess that makes it easier.
Makes what easier?
Well, I think I'm gonna withdraw, or decline the invitation, or...
Why, Maria, it's a wonderful opportunity. I have a class of graduate students who would give anything for that invitation.
Well, I just got a phone call from them, and, they won't let me hang one of my paintings. So I decided not to do it at all.
What do you mean they won't let you hang one of your paintings?
Well, I submitted 4 paintings from the series I'm working on about stereotypes. You know, where I paint a person that suggests a stereotype, and then somewhere in the painting I put something that works against the stereotype. You know, to get people thinking about assumptions they make about people based on how they look, how they dress.
Yes, it's a great idea. I'm not surprised you stood out in the competition.
Well, they've decided one of my paintings is too controversial, so they won't let me hang it. And I think, well, that's censorship. I don't think it's fair.
Well, I can see your point, but, well, they still want you to show your other 3 paintings, right? And those paintings say something about stereotypes, too, don't they?
Well, yes, but still, it's censorship. So you think it's, well, okay to participate anyway?
I can't tell you what to do, Maria.
I was just so mad when they called. I don't know.
Aren't all the paintings in the series controversial in a way? Isn't that part of exposing stereotype thinking?
Well, yeah, true. Maybe it's worth it. I mean, even though they won't let me show one of them, there are 3 others. And they did say I could submit another one for consideration.
I think at some point every serious artist has to decide where to draw the line. It's a personal matter.
Yeah, and it's not always clear-cut, is it? Thanks a lot.
Anytime, Maria.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 7. Why does the student go to see her professor? Number 8. According to the professor, what is true about the annual Gregory Art Show? Number 9. Why is the student considering not entering the art show? Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
Well, I can see your point, but, well, they still want you to show your other 3 paintings, right? And those paintings say something about stereotypes, too, don't they?
Well, yes, but still, it's censorship. So you think it's, well, okay to participate anyway?
I can't tell you what to do, Maria.
Number 10. What is the professor's attitude about the students' participation in the art show? Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
Well, yeah, true. Maybe it's worth it. I mean, even though they won't let me show one of them, there are 3 others. And they did say I could submit another one for consideration.
I think at some point every serious artist has to decide where to draw the line. It's a personal matter.
Yeah, and it's not always clear-cut, is it? Thanks a lot.
Anytime, Maria.
Number 11. What does the professor mean when he says this?
I think at some point every serious artist has to decide where to draw the line. It's a personal matter.
Number 12. What will the student probably do next? Listen to part of a lecture in a geography class.
Today we're going to move away from our study of deserts to what some would consider their opposites. This would be, of course, forests. What is a forest exactly? The answer depends on your position. If you're standing outside a forest looking at it, you can simply say that it is an area of land covered mostly with trees. This is correct as far as it goes. We have to specify, though, that it is a very large area, not just a patch of land. Forests can extend over millions of square miles. So, we have 2 main criteria for what a forest is, and these are the presence of large amounts of trees and a large amount of territory they cover. This doesn't tell us anything important, though. You can't really know much about the composition of the human body without looking inside it, and the same goes for forests. And a forest is a kind of system, much as the body is. So now we move a bit closer to the forest. The first thing that should be clear is that the specific kinds of trees are becoming identifiable. If we're high in the mountains or somewhere in the north of the country where temperatures are generally colder, we're likely to be seeing mostly evergreen trees like firs and pines. These are coniferous forests. We call it a boreal forest if it's in the far north, or a montane forest if it's at high elevations. Now let's move to a lower, warmer region. Instead of evergreens, we can expect to see perhaps oaks, maples, and hickories, all of which have broad leaves as opposed to needles. Naturally enough, this sort of forest is called a broadleaf forest, also a deciduous forest. Same thing, different name. Maybe it's in a temperate zone, maybe it's in the tropics. It doesn't matter. Of course, not all evergreen forests grow in high or cold regions. If we happen to be on the west coast of North America, for example, we'll be able to see coniferous forests all around, some with extremely huge conifers like sequoias. We'll also see that these forests get a lot of rainfall thanks to moist winds off the Pacific Ocean. They are therefore properly called rainforests, even though they're in a temperate region and not the tropics. People don't normally imagine rainforests being in the United States at all, much less being composed of evergreens. Many forests are mixed, containing both evergreen and deciduous trees. You'll find these forests mostly in areas that are not constantly rainy, but get periodic rainfall all during the year. These are places with no distinct dry or wet seasons. All right, so now we're inside the forest. It doesn't matter what kind it is. First of all, we can see that it's not homogeneous. There are trees of many different species and sizes. We can also see that the forest has 4 vertical layers. In the uppermost layer, there are the tops of the tallest trees in the forest. This highest layer is called the canopy since it overlays everything else. If you're a tree, your greatest goal in life, your standard of success, is to make it into the canopy, where you can get lots of sunlight and photosynthesize with the upper class. The next layer is quite a bit lower from our perspective. It is composed of smaller trees, rarely growing higher than 6 meters tall. Accordingly, it's called the shrub layer, though another name is the understory. The next lowest layer you can find under your feet. This is the leaf litter layer, which is composed of the leaves that have fallen from the trees. Mixed in with these are dead plants and living organisms, including insects and animals. Different sorts of processes go on here as the leaves decay and break down. Brushing back the leaves, we find the lowest and final layer, the dirt layer. The main part of this layer is indeed dirt, which contains nutrients as well as organisms of different kinds. The canopy affects the rest of the forest in various ways. A thick canopy prevents light from reaching the rest of the forest and therefore lowers the overall temperature. It also controls the amount of rainwater that reaches the lower layers. In turn, this allows only certain kinds of plants and shrubs to grow in these layers. In tropical rainforests like those in Costa Rica or Brazil, the most animal diversity is found in the canopy. Many species live only there. This isn't the case in temperate areas. There you can find the most variety of life at the leaf litter and dirt layers. We'll discuss these lower layers in more detail next time.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 13. What aspect of forests does the professor mainly discuss? Number 14. How does the professor illustrate the value of an inside look at a forest? Number 15. According to the professor, where are boreal forests most likely to be found? Number 16. In the lecture, the professor describes some features of broadleaf forests. Indicate whether each of the following is mentioned in the lecture as being characteristic of broadleaf forests. Number 17. According to the professor, which kind of forest is found mostly in areas with periodic year-round rainfall? Listen again to part of the lecture. Then answer the question.
This highest layer is called the canopy since it overlays everything else. If you're a tree, your greatest goal in life, your standard of success, is to make it into the canopy, where you can get lots of sunlight and photosynthesize with the upper class.
Number 18. Why does the professor mention goals, success, and the upper class? Listen to part of a lecture in a political science class.
So it seems you can't turn on the news these days without hearing something about establishing a democratic government in one place or another, or debates about whether a democracy is failing. As I'm sure you've noticed, the debates can get pretty heated, and a lot of the time it seems people are talking past each other. It's like they don't even have a common understanding of what they mean when they use the word democracy. Is there really any way to measure, to evaluate a democracy, whether it's healthy or not? We've looked at the ancient Greeks and their ideas about democracy. They meant direct rule. Direct rule. Citizens gathered together at an open meeting, discussed issues, made decisions. The adult male citizens, that is, but not all the people, not women, for instance, which is a pretty big chunk of the people. Well, that's how they did it in Athens in the 5th century BC, but that's not how we do it in the United States in the 21st century. So how can we call ourselves a democracy? Well, we practice something called representative democracy. It's too impractical, too difficult for our entire population to meet together. You can see that for yourself. So here citizens elect people to represent them. Representative democracy. And really, it's just about the only kind we can hope for in today's world, when countries are so large and populous, have so many citizens. If we look at these situations that everyone's talking about these days, do we have any way we can judge whether a country is a democracy or on its way to becoming one? Well, yes, we do. There are, in fact, 3 attributes, 3 basic characteristics of a democracy that are so important, so fundamental, that without one, well, and they're so interrelated, that if a government is missing one of the 3, or if one of them isn't functioning, then you'd have to say that country isn't meeting the standards of a democracy. What are they? 3 attributes. 1. Popular sovereignty. 2. Political equality. And 3. Political liberty. Let's look at them one at a time. Popular sovereignty, that's the idea that the government does what the people want it to do. Pretty simple. If government policies are in line with its citizens' wishes, and to know that, we've got to have the people participating in the political life of their country. For them to do that, they've got to be informed. They've got to have access to good information, and there's got to be healthy debate about policies. And then, ultimately, the majority rules. After all, the debate and information gathering, when a majority of the citizens agree on something and express it through the political process, and the government carries out that decision, well, then you've got popular sovereignty. You can probably guess how the second principle, political equality, how it fits into the equation. Political equality means that each person has one vote and only one vote, no more, no less. When it comes to making a decision, each person has the same power. All the people are equal when it comes to determining the popular will. Of course, I can just hear some of you saying, but what about money? Well, I have to save that for another discussion, but for now, let me tell you that, in fact, that is a debate about democracy. Does it require material equality? Can you have people with wildly different incomes and wealth and still have a democracy? You'll hear arguments both ways. It's something to think about. On to the third element, political liberty. These are those freedoms we know from our Bill of Rights. Freedom of press, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of thought. And you can understand how these are related to the other 2 elements. For instance, without a free press, you're not going to have the quality information you need to make up your mind about some policy. If you can't meet, how can you discuss issues? How can you have a chance to persuade someone that your new idea is better than the old way of doing things? So, what you had in the countries of Eastern Europe back in the 90s, for instance, was a demand not just to elect representatives, but they wanted all the other things. They wanted the political freedoms that would make those elections meaningful. So, we can look at any country through the lens of these 3 attributes, and by seeing to what extent each principle exists in the country, we can get a pretty good idea of the state of its democracy.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 1. What aspect of democracy does the professor mainly discuss? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
We've looked at the ancient Greeks and their ideas about democracy. They meant direct rule. Direct rule. Citizens gathered together in an open meeting, discussed issues, made decisions. The adult male citizens, that is, but not all the people, not women, for instance, which is a pretty big chunk of the people.
Number 2. What is the professor's attitude towards democracy in ancient Athens? Number 3. According to the professor, which of the following is necessary for popular sovereignty? Number 4. Why does the professor mention the Bill of Rights? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
You can probably guess how the second principle, political equality, how it fits into the equation. Political equality means that each person has one vote and only one vote, no more, no less. When it comes to making a decision, each person has the same power. All the people are equal when it comes to determining the popular will. Of course, I can just hear some of you saying, but what about money? Well, I have to save that for another discussion, but for now, let me tell you that, in fact, that is a debate about democracy. Does it require material equality? Can you have people with wildly different incomes and wealth and still have a democracy? You'll hear arguments both ways. It's something to think about.
Number 5. Why does the professor say this?
You'll hear arguments both ways. It's something to think about.
Number 6. Based on information in the lecture, indicate whether each statement below expresses a condition necessary for a healthy democracy. Listen to part of a conversation in the university's campus parking office.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Yes, I hope I'm in the right place. I'm here to apply for a handicapped parking pass.
Yes, we issue permits. Your name, please.
Joe Schmidt.
Okay, Mr. Schmidt. Let me check the computer. I can't find anything in here. SCHMIDT, right?
Yes. I am registered. I should be in there.
Maybe not. This isn't a database of registered students. This is information we get from the Health Services Clinic. If you were there recently and the doctor has determined that you aren't able to walk long distances, then he tags a file for us.
Oh no, it's not for me. I mean, I need the handicap pass, but I'm not the one who can't walk. It's my roommate. He broke his ankle playing volleyball and will be in a cast for maybe 6 weeks.
What's his name?
Arnie Schwartz.
SCH... Oh, yes, here it is. Dr. Harvey has sent us the notice. But I can't really give you a permit that's been allocated to Mr. Schwartz. He should come in and fill out an application.
But he doesn't have a car. I do.
So why do you need his permit on your car?
Well, I'll probably drive him to class a lot if we can park close enough.
Does he know you're trying to get his handicapped permit?
Yeah, he asked me to. It's not easy for him to get around. That's why he's not here himself.
I understand, but...
What if he signs something, like a permission slip or something?
I was just going to suggest that you take this application form back to him. Have him sign it and write down the license plate number of your car. I mean, though technically it should be his, I suppose it doesn't really matter who owns the car.
So he wouldn't have to come in?
Normally I would have to check an ID before issuing a permit, but I guess his signature would be enough.
And then what? Bring the form back here?
Right, and then I'll print up an 8-week permit for you.
Couldn't you just call him and get his permission?
Sorry, I have to have his signature.
Okay, I guess I'll have to come back. Thank you.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 7. Why is the student in the campus parking office? Number 8. Why does the man have difficulty getting what he wants? Number 9. What information is in the office's database? Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
So why do you need his permit on your car?
Well, I'll probably drive him to class a lot if we can park close enough.
Does he know you're trying to get his handicapped permit?
Yeah, he asked me to. It's not easy for him to get around. That's why he's not here himself.
Number 10. Why does the woman ask the man these questions?
So why do you need his permit on your car? Does he know you're trying to get his handicapped permit?
Listen again to part of the conversation, then answer the question.
Have him sign it and write down the license plate number of your car. I mean, though technically it should be his, I suppose it doesn't really matter who owns the car.
So he wouldn't have to come in?
Number 11. How does the woman feel about registering the handicap permit for the man's car? Number 12. What does the woman offer to do for the man? Listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
I think most of you at one time or another have eaten at a McDonald's fast food place. In certain ways, McDonald's as a company is actually representative of some important trends in modern American life. It should come as no surprise that these trends are controversial. In fact, some people refer to them collectively as McDonaldization. To begin with, let's look at how McDonald's is operated. The main principle is efficiency. This means that all tasks are performed with as little waste of time or energy as possible. Even when it was just starting out, the company's service goal was to serve a hamburger, fries, and a milkshake to a customer in exactly, 50 seconds. Though this strict time limit is no longer followed, speed is still the single most important quality of McDonald's. The focus on efficiency can be seen in every other aspect of McDonald's service. Customers take care of picking up their own meals as well as cleaning, which is easy since all food comes in disposable materials. There's no need for the restaurant workers to waste time collecting or washing plates and utensils. All that's necessary is to take out the trash. Even the food itself is efficient. For example, the Egg McMuffin has most of the components of a regular breakfast in one convenient sandwich. In order for an organization to be efficient, several operational requirements must be met. One of these is calculability. Every amount of every resource, whether paper, cooking oil, or the amount of meat in a hamburger, as well as the burger's size, are known precisely. Even the length and width of a single French fry have exact, uniform measurements. This allows all food served by McDonald's to adhere to a common standard. It also helps the company to accurately predict the amounts of money it needs to spend for supplies. If the exact quantities of everything to be served are known, then it is far easier to plan the company's operations. Another requirement, which is partly a result of calculability, is predictability. This aspect of McDonald's is very obvious. It doesn't matter whether the restaurant is in Russia or Texas, the ingredients and preparation methods of McDonald's food are almost completely the same. This is certainly intentional, but it would happen anyway given the system that McDonald's uses. When resources and time are allocated rationally, when as little as possible is left to chance, the result is a highly uniform product. I hope you can see here that the system underlying McDonald's is one that tries to control the movements of its resources as much as possible. What cannot be predictably controlled, though, are the actual people working for the company. Humans don't really seem suited for doing things the same way again and again, and their performance can change according to their momentary moods or attitudes. It's possible, therefore, to say then that humans are the least efficient part of a rational system. In order to reduce this unpredictability, McDonald's has automated the production of its food as much as possible. For instance, temperature and time cannot be adjusted on cooking equipment. All that's necessary is to turn it on. It turns off automatically. Now we've identified 4 characteristics of the McDonald's approach. These are efficiency, calculability, predictability, and automation. As principles of business, they've allowed McDonald's to become very successful. But at the same time, they've also come to characterize much of American life. We can see the emphasis on efficiency all around us. Everything, it seems, should be done quickly without any seemingly unnecessary additions to the process. So much so that it seems difficult to think that something that's efficient is not also good. Also, consider the standardization of so many things in our lives. In fact, Americans tend to distrust products that don't appear standardized. Not only all the mass-produced things we use or eat, but also the things we do, from sharply delineated work hours to strictly arranged vacation packages, from buying groceries to shopping at the mall, the elements of which are all precisely calculated. In turn, as our experiences become more uniform, they also become more predictable. And we see more automation and less contact with actual people. This is what I mean by McDonaldization.
Now get ready to answer the questions. You may use your notes to help you answer. Number 13. What is the lecture mainly about? Number 14. What reason is given for McDonald's business methods? Number 15. According to the professor, what are some ways in which McDonaldization can be seen in American life? Choose two answers. Number 16. How does the professor develop the topic of McDonaldization? Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
This means that all tasks are performed with as little waste of time or energy as possible. Even when it was just starting out, the company's service goal was to serve a hamburger, fries, and a milkshake to a customer in exactly, 50 seconds.
Number 17. Why does the professor say this?
The company's service goal was to serve a hamburger, fries, and a milkshake to a customer in exactly, 50 seconds.
Listen again to part of the lecture, then answer the question.
In turn, as our experiences become more uniform, they also become more predictable. And we see more automation and less contact with actual people. This is what I mean by McDonaldization.
Number 18. What is the professor's attitude towards McDonaldization? Speaking section. Describe your favorite day of the week and explain why you like it. Include details and examples to support your explanation. Some restaurants insist that patrons turn off their cell phones while dining. Other restaurants have no rules regarding cell phones. Which policy do you think is better and why? State University has decided that unpaid internships will no longer fulfill the requirement for graduation. Read the announcement about the decision from the president of State University. You will have 45 seconds to read the announcement. Begin reading now. Now listen to two students as they discuss the announcement.
What a big mistake.
What do you mean? The president's right. I've talked to a lot of seniors and they did important work. Projects that companies sorely needed and that required advanced skills and in-depth knowledge. And still they weren't paid a cent.
Most of the seniors I talked to were paid, but that doesn't mean they should have to be.
That's because you're an engineering major, and everyone knows the companies offer paid, well-paid internships to top engineering students, science too. But somehow we liberal arts types end up working for free. It's really not fair.
Yeah, but what if they can't afford to pay interns? Then you'll lose out on great opportunities. You can't deny the value of the experience.
No, I can't. But you know what? I think a lot of those companies are simply taking advantage of students who have to do an internship to graduate. How many companies are really that poor? If what interns do is valuable enough to the company, it'll find a way to pay, believe me. And if the company doesn't want to pay for the work, then it's really not a quality internship anyway.
I hope you're right for your sake.
The man expresses his opinion of the announcement by the university president. State his opinion and explain the reasons he gives for holding that opinion. Now read a passage about water quality. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on this topic.
So one aspect of water quality in the home is whether the water is hard or soft. Many homes use water softeners to remove the dissolved calcium and magnesium found in hard water. That is, after all, the definition of hard water, isn't it? But, why bother turning hard water into soft water? Why do people prefer soft water? Well, it turns out there are two main objections to hard water in the home. One, it doesn't react well with soap. Hard water and soap cause rings in the bathtub, and clothes washed in hard water develop a grayish look. What else? Well, hard water leaves mineral deposits in plumbing, which can cause problems. Burning out the electrical elements in a hot water heater, for instance. Ruining coffee pots. So most people use water softeners to avoid these problems if they have a hard water supply. But here's something to consider. Several studies have shown that there is an inverse relationship between the hardness of public water supplies and the incidence of heart disease. That is, the harder the water, the less heart disease. Although the reasons for this relationship are not understood, it's been observed worldwide. Maybe hard water is actually better for us.
The professor describes the effects of the household use of hard water. Explain how this is related to water quality. Now listen to a conversation between two students.
Hey, Dylan, do you have a moment? I'd like to ask your opinion on something.
Hey, hi Annie, how's it going? Sure, I've got half an hour before my next class, and you know me, I love to give advice.
I sure could use some. I'm having a hard time figuring out which of two classes I should take next semester. Have you ever taken a course with Ms. Washington?
I sure have, and my advice is avoid her like the plague.
That's what everyone says.
With good reason. She'll bore you to death. She couldn't make a topic interesting if her life depended on it. She's got this monotonous voice. Just dull, dull, dull. Find a different class.
Well, there is another class I'm considering, taught by Ms. Aparicio.
Night and day. Aparicio's dynamite. Whatever it is, take it.
Yeah, I had a class from her last year and she was great. But her class next semester, well, I couldn't care less about the topic. I'd be bored to tears, I'm sure. And Washington is teaching a course I'm really interested in.
And you don't need either one for your major?
No, they're both electives. I mean, I need the credits, but any course in my major will do. These are the two that fit in best with the other courses I have to take.
So it comes down to, do you take a course that doesn't interest you at all but is being taught by one of the best teachers on campus? Or do you take a course from a lousy teacher because you have a passion for the subject?
Yeah, that about sums it up. What would you do?
I'd probably go with Aparicio's class. You can always do reading on the other topic on your own.
I thought of that, but I don't really have the time.
You know, you might discover that Aparicio can get you interested in her subject. Maybe you'll discover that it's not boring at all.
I guess that's a possibility, too. It'd be such an easy decision if Aparicio were teaching Washington's course.
The students discuss two possible solutions to the woman's problem. Describe the problem, then state which of the two solutions you prefer and explain why. Now listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
One of the wonderful automatic mechanisms of the human body is its tendency to self-regulate, that is, to keep things like its body temperature, and levels of oxygen in the blood, that kind of thing, to keep them within certain acceptable ranges. This self-regulation, this ability, this tendency of the body to keep body variables within a certain range, we call that homeostasis. Regulating body temperature is probably the biological process, the homeostatic process we're most familiar with or aware of. In fact, you can think of homeostasis, the way it works, as acting like the body's thermostat. Just like in your house or apartment, there is a thermostat that regulates the heating and cooling systems. It maintains a constant or near constant temperature in the room. The more sophisticated thermostats these days let you set a range of temperatures for given time periods. If the temperature in the room falls below that range, the heat goes on. If it rises above that range, air conditioning turns on. Homeostasis in humans works in a similar way. If the body falls below a certain temperature, for humans and most other mammals, it's right around 37 degrees centigrade. Well, then the body will start generating heat to raise the body temperature. It starts shivering, which is simply rhythmic muscle contractions that help generate heat. Jumping up and down or running around accomplishes the same thing. Or if the body gets too hot, it will, well, the human body at least, will start sweating to reduce the body temperature. Or we stop moving around. We complain that it's too hot to do anything. In fact, we're right. Reducing activity helps lower body temperature. So homeostasis involves biological processes that work to maintain body variables within a fixed range.
Using points and examples from the talk, explain what homeostasis is and how it works to regulate body temperature. Writing section. Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you just read about.
Arthur Evans's discovery of the palace at Knossos is one of the great events in archaeology. It brought to light a culture and history that had been just dimly guessed at before, and showed how myth could have some bearing on reality, even when separated by many centuries. Evans will always be remembered for this, which is the way it should be. However, while we should always give credit to Evans for his discovery, we should remember that his own interpretations of them were, seriously flawed. Because of this, most of the really important work on ancient Crete was done by his contemporaries and successors. Probably the best example is Michael Ventress's deciphering of the Linear B alphabet, which Evans had found on tablets at Knossos. As you know, Evans himself wasn't ever able to figure it out. Linear B turned out to be something totally different from what Evans had thought. It was actually a script for writing Greek, not some unknown Cretan language. This alone wouldn't have hurt Evans's theories much, since the tablet could simply have been imported from Greece. However, other archaeologists had found tablets written in Linear B on the mainland. When Linear B was found to be Greek, this showed there had indeed been a transference of culture, but not the one Evans thought. Instead of the advanced and powerful Cretans bringing writing to the weaker Greeks, those Greeks had brought their own language in their own writing to Crete. The clear implication was that Crete had actually been conquered by the mainland Greeks at one time. Evans's notion of the Cretans as possessing a more developed and powerful society could no longer be sustained.
Summarize the points in the lecture you just heard, explaining how they cast doubt on Evans' findings and theory.